The day had started off normally, with the usual routine of tidying up after breakfast and getting ready for the day. I had no idea then that by evening, everything would change. My stepson, Jake, was home from college for the weekend. He'd always been polite and kind, the sort of young man any mother or stepmother would be proud of. But something felt different that evening, something that caught me entirely off guard. Recently, Jake had been dedicated to fitness, frequently talking about health and workout routines. His commitment was impressive, and he often shared tips for staying fit and reducing stress. After a long day of running errands and completing chores, I was exhausted, my back aching and muscles sore from all the bending and lifting. Jake noticed this right away and, with his usual charm, suggested something innocent enough: a massage. I hesitated at first. He was my stepson, and such close contact felt a little strange. But Jake reassured me, saying he'd learned some helpful techniques from a friend studying physical therapy. Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking there was no harm in it. It was just a massage, after all. We sat in the living room, the soft light of the setting sun casting a relaxed atmosphere, making everything seem more comfortable. Jake gently placed his hands on my shoulders, and I had to admit it felt wonderful. His hands were both firm and gentle, working out the knots in my muscles. I closed my eyes, feeling the tension slowly melt away as he focused on my neck and shoulders. At first, it was completely innocent, just a simple massage. But then, gradually, something changed. It happened slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. But soon I noticed Jake's hands lingering longer, applying a bit more pressure. What had started as comforting began to feel different. A warmth spread through me, and it was no longer just physical relaxation. It was something else. My heart started racing, a mixture of confusion and a strange, thrilling sensation building inside me. I opened my eyes, trying to focus on anything else, but it was impossible to ignore what I felt. Jake's hands moved lower down my back, his breath close to my neck. My pulse quickened, and I felt torn between the urge to say something, to stop this before it went further, and the undeniable truth that a part of me didn't want it to stop. This was wrong. I knew it. He was my stepson, and we were crossing a line that shouldn't even be approached. But in that moment, reason and logic seemed far away. All I could think about was how his touch made me feel alive, wanted, in a way I hadn't felt for years. I knew I should say something, but my voice felt trapped, the words stuck behind a wall of conflicting emotions. Just as I was about to summon the strength to stop him, Jake leaned in close and whispered in my ear, "I've been waiting for this." His voice was low, filled with raw intensity that sent shivers down my spine. It was like a switch flipped, blurring the line between right and wrong even more. My body responded before my mind could catch up, and I found myself leaning into his touch, craving more of the warmth and closeness. Before I realized it, we were entwined together on the couch, the world around us fading away, leaving just the two of us, caught in this intense, forbidden moment. My mind screamed at me to stop, to think of the consequences, to consider how this would change everything, but my body refused to listen. I had never felt this way before, not with anyone, not even with my husband. There was a fire between Jake and me that I couldn't put out, no matter how wrong it felt. As the night continued, we crossed lines I never thought I'd cross. Each touch, each kiss felt like stepping further into a forbidden world from which there was no return. It wasn't only physical, it was something deeper, something that shook me to my core. Jake was no longer just my stepson. He had become something else, something I couldn't fully comprehend or control. When it was over, reality hit hard. I pulled away, the weight of what had just happened settling heavily on me. Jake looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of satisfaction and something darker, more complex. We sat in silence, each of us unsure of what to say or how to proceed from here. Guilt crashed over me like a wave. How could I let this happen? How could I betray my husband, Jake's father, like this? But deep down, I couldn't ignore how it made me feel, how alive I had felt in those stolen moments with Jake. It was a risky game, one that could ruin everything if it ever came to light, but at that moment, all I could think about was wanting to feel that way again. Days went by, and things between Jake and me grew more complicated. We tried to act normal, but there was an undeniable tension in the air, a shared secret that weighed heavily between us. My husband noticed the shift, but I deflected his questions, telling him it was nothing, just stress from work and daily life. Inside, though, I was torn, struggling with guilt while still craving the desire that lingered within me. His calmness was both infuriating and intoxicating. 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 Part of me wanted to end it, to stop this madness before it spiraled out of control. But a darker, desperate part of me couldn't let go. Then, one night, everything came to a head. My husband was away on a business trip, leaving just Jake and me alone in the house. The tension that had been building between us for days finally reached a breaking point, and we couldn't resist each other any longer. Before I realized it, we were back on the couch, tangled together once more. But this time, something felt different. There was an edge to Jake's touch, a hunger that hadn't been there before. It was as if he were testing me, pushing boundaries to see how far I'd go. The unsettling part was that I went along with it, not holding back. I'd already crossed so many lines. What was one more step into the darkness? Afterward, as we lay there, the weight of our actions hung heavily in the room. I knew this couldn't continue, that it would destroy everything if it ever came to light. But the thought of ending it, of never feeling that rush again, was unbearable. I was trapped in a web of desire and guilt, unable to find a way out. Yet fate has a way of catching up to you, and it wasn't long before everything unraveled. My husband found out. I don't know how, but he did. Maybe it was the looks Jake and I shared when we thought no one noticed, or perhaps it was something else entirely. But when he confronted me, there was no hiding it anymore. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. The aftermath was worse than I could have imagined. My marriage ended, my connection with Jake shattered, and I was left to pick up the pieces alone. Even in the midst of all the pain and regret, part of me still craved what I had lost. That forbidden excitement, that dangerous bond. Looking back, I can't believe how far I let things go, how easily I allowed myself to be drawn into something so destructive. Yet at the same time, I can't deny that it was real, that those feelings were genuine. It's a part of me now, something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life, a reminder of the lines we shouldn't cross and the consequences of crossing them. In the days that followed, everything felt surreal. My husband moved out, leaving the house hauntingly quiet. Every room was a stark reminder of the life I had shattered, the trust I had broken. The guilt was a constant weight, pressing down on me, impossible to escape. Friends and family began to distance themselves, some out of shock, others in silent judgment. A few reached out, offering sympathy, but I could see the questions in their eyes, out of control, in past excitement, in frustration. And as I crumbled, the remains of my anxiety assailed me. I asked myself the same question repeatedly. How had I let this happen? How could I have been so reckless? But no matter how much I searched for answers, they remained out of reach. All I knew was that something that had begun as an innocent gesture, a simple massage, had spiraled into something I could never have anticipated. If you found my story meaningful, or if it resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll be sharing more stories like this, stories of resilience, healing, and finding hope even in the darkest times. Thank you for listening.